Welcome in. This is the RGR Football Channel. Tonight's Monday night Q&A. Appreciate all of you being with me tonight. As you can see, it's myself. There is no Ryan. He is on vacation, enjoying himself as I will be next week. So I hope you guys are going to be, enjoying the last bits of your summer before Chiefs camp starts, and we all kind of lose our minds a little bit. So just off the top, before we get into the questions, Ryan posed this Q&A as Nick Bolton leading the way for the new All-Pro possibilities in 2023. And considering how he was 8th on the ESPN ranked, team, GMs and players in the league that voted on the linebackers, their own rankings chart, stuff like that. He was 8th there after not being ranked last year. It's not out of the question that he could finish as an All-Pro this coming season because he does have the counting stats and he makes plays, regardless. He's going to cause some fumbles. He does get some interceptions here and there. So I think for me, in order to see him really take that step forward and become an all-pro linebacker, especially for voting, you're going to have to be much better in the pass game. Like, that's just kind of how it is. If he's going to be ceding his snaps to Drew Tranquill, we're going to have another conversation about that whole thing. But he's definitely going to be in the realm of being an all-pro with a lot of the different, all the sacks that all the tackles that he gets, being involved in the sacks and things like that. So I do think that it's definitely not out of the question. I do believe that we're going to see Creed Humphrey take a step this year and become, a first-team All-Pro center. I think that's going to happen. You have lots of other guys that are going to have their hands in the thick of it. We think, L'Jarius Sneed is going to be in that as well. We assume he can take that step. So who is a player on this team that you guys could see taking a step from where they were last year and becoming this first team, maybe earning some second team All-Pro stats? Leave them in the comment section and we'll make sure to have some fun talk about that. But again, thank you guys for being here with me tonight. It is the live Q&A. It is your show. If you guys would love to support the channel, the super chats are open. Every super chat will get a question tonight regardless. As you all know, I'm a family man, so I'm going to try to get out of here on time within the hour, and we'll see if I ramble and ramble and ramble. So let's go ahead and jump in. Micah started us off really hot with a bunch of fire questions, so we're going to get into them now. Thank you, Micah. Jags revealed their new stadium plans model with a transparent or a tinted roof. Players and fans have complained that the heat of September games there. Can you see other teams doing the same due to global warming? It wouldn't surprise me if the entire league at some point is going to be all domes. I'll be honest with you. It wouldn't shock me in the slightest to be in that regard. But especially those teams in the South, anywhere, even in LA and things like that, wouldn't shock me if they all tried to be a little bit more, I guess, conscious of the heat and dehydration and things like that. So I would lean to know maybe more about domes in the future and things like that. But it's definitely something nice to see that the teams are being more considerate of how it affects their own players and the away teams, the visiting teams. So that's at least something for the Jags doing. So I appreciate you there. Whoops, next one here. Besides staying healthy, why is it so hard to win the Super Bowl? Repeat Super Bowls, excuse me. And what's the mindset for the team versus the 2020 team? So the hardest thing is having to, honestly, from what I have seen over the past couple of years, is having those change ups to what you did last year. Teams are always out to get you. They're always coming to give you their best foot, and they're always going to try to take down the champs. That's the biggest thing, is always having those change ups to what you did last year, always staying ahead of the game, always staying ahead of the other teams, other defenses, how they're going to come at you. But in terms of consistently getting the best effort from other teams week in and week out, that's the really tough thing. The Chiefs were already one of the teams that had to deal with that, but now they've been to the Super Bowl 3 times out of the last 5 years. That target gets even bigger. So it's about staying in that mindset and not allowing all of the outside noise, the fact that they've been there, to make them calm, to calm them down. It's to continue to be hungry. They have a lot of young players, and that helps a lot when you have the senior leadership. You have the guys that have been there, they've done that, and they've been to the mountaintop, and they have that, they call it the sage advice, the kind of guys that are veterans in the locker room. And you have a ton of youth who, regardless of the fact that they were rookies last year, they have all these contributors that are going to be on the team for the next 3-4 years that are really, really young. I think the combination of the veteran leadership and the youth on the team is really what is the big thing for the mindset. There's always guys driving, even the veterans. The veterans drive themselves, and it's just about continuing to stay hungry. So that's really all it is for me. All right, we got that one. We got a couple more here from Micah before we move on to everybody else's. But you guys, this is what you can do. You can always come in here in the chat early and just throw a bunch of questions in there, and we'll just get right into them. So, what's Nick Bolton got to do to improve or to reach Derek Johnson's level? So, he's probably never going to get to Derek Johnson's level because Derek Johnson was also a good coverage linebacker, and he could do all three phases of the game, and he could cover guys man on man. He could be getting interceptions. He could kind of see where the quarterback was going. It was more than just a zone dropper. And I do think that Nick Bolton's going to be ceding some of his pass coverage snaps to Drew Tranquill. So I don't really know if he's going to ever get to that point. And if he does, that'd be awesome. That'd be fantastic. But I think the reality of the situation is that he's an excellent first and second down linebacker that has been taken advantage of on third downs when he's forced to be in coverage. Now, when he's blitzing or if he's, mugging up on the interior, creating one-on-ones for the guys or for the defensive line, that's fantastic. It's what he does best. I really do think that just the usage downhill, he's gotten better side-to-side movement, and I think that all of that is gotten better. But at the end of the day, I just think that he's not going to get to that point because it's just not his skill set. And there's nothing wrong with that. All right. Appreciate those, Micah. What's up, Steve? How you doing, man? What would a Creed Humphrey extension look like? So I've actually got another question here from Benjamin. Thank you for your question. We'll talk both about the Creed Humphrey talk right here for both of you guys. So looking at a couple of the other center contracts out there, the highest paid center in the NFL is Jason Kelce. He has that 1 year, $14.25 million contract. He's 36 years old. Frank Ragnow has the second, quote unquote, best contract. He's got a $54 million total contract. Average per year is 13.5. So you're looking at what, 4 years? Yeah, about 4 or 5 years on the center. So I think if we're looking at what Creed Humphrey is going to end up signing, I would think you would want to compare it to what Joe Thuney got in some way, shape, or form. Probably looking at 5 years. And around, Joe Thuney got 5 years, $80 million, which we know I wouldn't imagine Creed Humphrey's going to get. But I think 5 years, maybe $55, $60 million in that range is what you're looking at. And especially if they go to, get that guaranteed level, that guaranteed money up for him, you could maybe settle it in on 60 million and just guarantee more of that. So he is maybe the average value for him is closer to $12 million. And then you can kind of parse out the guarantees. But I would, like I said, compare it a little bit to that. Maybe you can bring it up to 70. I don't really know exactly how they want to do that. I would imagine they want to make him the second highest, if not the highest paid center in the NFL. So maybe closer to 70. So 5 years, $70 million. You can probably guarantee about 50 plus million of that because he doesn't really miss time. So if I had to guess, that's what I would look like. And if I'm right in a couple of years, you guys go ahead and let me know because that'd be awesome if I was right about that. Thank you, Steve. We got another one here from Micah. Thoughts on the bank robber stuff? Was Pat McAfee lying or telling the truth that he wore the full wolf suit for some robberies? I don't think he ever wore any of the wolf suit stuff for the robberies, not from what I've seen on Twitter. But again, Twitter is a microcosm of what happens. There is the Kansas FBI department that has been, showing clips, or not clips, but like pictures of him doing this stuff. Thoughts on it? He's ridiculous, and he's finally caught. He'll be going to jail for a very long time, and he was able to get away with 6. He was linked to 6 different robberies, at least, somewhere around 6. That's ridiculous, honestly. And the fact that he was on the run for 4 months after bail is kind of inexcusable in my opinion. So he's finally been taken down, and he won't be getting out of jail anytime soon, in my opinion. But in terms of thoughts, don't be doing that kind of stuff. Just don't do it. And then lying about it on social media. That's just not going to paint y'all in a good light. Thank you, Micah. How's everybody doing tonight? Monday, we got 2 more weeks before training camp starts up. Not even 2 weeks. They got like 7 or 8 days until they report. Like, I'm feeling good about it. I'm feeling good about it. By the way, I don't know if you guys are into fantasy football or not, but the Scott Fish Bowl just started today for a lot of us, myself included. And I'm doing my drafts today, so I'm wearing one of my draft shirts. Bam. Matches well with all the entire stuff I got going on back here, but it's been a nice slow day, and I hope everyone's doing well. Scott, thank you for the question. Who is more likely to do the best grilling in the rain, Dan or Mitchell Schwartz? So it's definitely not me. Mitchell Schwartz he was doing this even long before I was. So we will go ahead and give the nod to the former All-Pro right tackle and just kind of leave it at that. We're going to try to get more experimental on my end. Living at Whiteman Air Force Base on base, it's nice to live on base, but at the same time, my kitchen is very, very small. I'm a big guy. It's not easy to move around in the kitchen. There's not enough space for everything, so it's tough for me to really get everything that I want in the kitchen and be able to just kind of not be stressed when I'm trying to cook sometimes, and everyone else is trying to be in the kitchen, and my daughter, my dog. I don't have room for all that stuff, so we'll definitely leave it with Mitch there. I don't think I have anything on him. One more from Scott here. Thank you again. Excuse me. Better fullback prospect for 2024, Stevie Keys or Seth Kaiser? Well, I have never met Stevie in person, so I cannot speak to his body composition. Seth would make a fine fullback. We'll go ahead and say Seth, just maybe to piss him off a little bit, because I'm sure that he is pretty happy with the fullback being kind of gone from Kansas City, and now they'll just kind of lean into their passing game and using more tight ends and things like that. Thanks, Scott. I love the random questions too, you guys. I'm a big fan of just answering some random nonsense. I'll be very honest about that. So make sure you guys, again, if you want to support, please, that would be awesome. The super chats are open, and there's not a lot of questions going on. We're used to doing this at 7 o'clock. I'm doing it a little early to help give me a little bit of time after this with the wife. So again, I appreciate y'all for being here with me. We'll just kind of keep it running. A nice conversational chats is what I love. So Jackson, thank you for the question. Accidentally misspoke on my question last night, and I meant to say that if D-Hop joins the roster, Tony would likely get a 1,000-yard season. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, the 1,000-yard season question next season. But is there a small chance he gets it this season? So if they add another wide receiver to the room, I don't believe – oh, sorry, my apologies. I do not believe that Kadarius Toney would be able to get 1,000 yards. If they add another one, I don't think anybody is going to get 1,000 yards except Travis Kelce, because Travis Kelce is the guy that's going to continuously get the targets. But everyone else's targets will go down if a guy like DeAndre Hopkins is here. So I'm going to go ahead and say there's almost no chance that he would get it this year. Definitely the year after, but he's going to be involved in a lot of different things in the offense. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to is seeing how he's used in the multitude of ways. They brought him in last year, and they were already using him in the backfield, getting the ball to him on a bunch of different screens, end arounds, jet sweep motions, and using him in contested situations as well. So I'm very interested to see what a full offseason with the playbook is going to look like, what they have expanded for him, what they don't include for him actually is very interesting as well, just because who knows if he's going to have a full playbook. Some players don't need full playbooks because they're just going to be schemed, and that's fine. I have no issues with that, especially with Andy Reid in charge. So I'm very, very, very interested in what they're going to do with Kadarius Toney this year. So I really, really hope that we get to see him healthy for most of the season, that would be fantastic. Thank you, Jackson. Got another one from me right here. Yeah. And if yes, would it be smart to put Cook and DeAndre Hopkins on the team? So I think one or the other. Personally, I don't have an issue if they bring both, but at the same time, I'd love to see just a couple of some, I guess, safety. The squirrel cash. You just kind of have it away a little bit in case you need it later in the season, because you're never really going to know. You don't want to spend all your money in the off season before the season before anything happens, and then if knock on wood over here, we don't want to be jinxing anything this season. If something were to happen that you need it later for, you don't have it there. So personally, one or the other, but both seems a little overkill to me. Thanks, man. Corbin, how's it going? How you guys doing? What's the panic level if there's not a significant growth from Skyy this year? The panic level. Interesting. My level for Skyy is not so much about improving. Funny enough, I think he showed everything that he showed in college last year, just in spurts, because they asked him to do so many different things. And using him as a punt returner and using him on jet sweeps really aren't his game. It's not his best tools. His best tools are getting the ball in the short to intermediate, getting open those. He did that very well last year. So I don't know if we necessarily need to see him take a step forward per se. If he doesn't start getting the targets and he's not being trusted by the staff enough to get those targets on the field, that's where I'll have my concerns. Because if you're not getting the targets from Patrick Mahomes and the talent level is there, and maybe you're just kind of not always in the right spot, that's where the disconnect comes in. Because I think the talent's there. I think it showed last year. But if he starts to come in and he's not getting the targets, that'll be a little concerning for me. I'll be pretty upset. So we'll say we have a scale of 1 to 10. For me, it'll be about a 6.5 in terms of the quote unquote panic. I'll be pretty upset and be pretty concerned with things if it's not working. Also, you will have a trend of second round picks and investment at wide receiver that maybe haven't worked out. And that's not always great. So there has to be something with development, have to be a way that they're scouting these players and taking some chances and / risks on them in the second round when there are other players around that they aren't drafting, they aren't taking those chances on. So if it ends up going this direction for Skyy Moore or Rashee Rice, we're going to have a conversation about how they are evaluating these wide receivers and how they are developing them on the roster, because that's the big thing for me. Well, thanks, Corbin. I do appreciate that. It's a good question. Got me off on a tangent about some other things. Howdy, y'all. Thanks, Andy. How's it going, guys? Fantastic Monday evening. I hope you guys are doing well, and we can continue this wonderful off season. It's been kind of slow. I know you guys probably also heard everything about the Northwestern nonsense happening over there. Finally, they fired their head coach. So there's lots of nothing going on. And then we have that news that has been dropped over the last week. So excited for the NFL season. Let's just say that. Thank you, Tyler. Not Chiefs related, but just when I thought I couldn't like 10 anymore, I noticed the Arsenal scarf in the background. Oh, to be a Gooner. That's right. I honestly, early in my youth, I should say, when I was like 18, 19 years old, I didn't like soccer very much, didn't like football very much. But over the years, I have really grown to appreciate it. And a few years ago, I decided, it's time for me to find a team that I like to watch. And I was watching Arsenal, and I'm like, I love the energy. I love the fact that they, that they are the Gooners. That's just something that I really like about them. At the color scheme, obviously, and then they've been active they spent the most money I think they ever have in their like almost history this offseason going to get Rice. So I'm pretty interested to see what they do. I'm still learning a lot about the construction of the Premier League and everything like that. So I'm excited to keep learning and appreciate that, Tyler, very, very much. So thank you. Benjamin. So I did address the Creed Humphrey part. I have not addressed the Trey Smith. a part of that because there's a lot of unknown with Trey Smith. He's a very good player for the Chiefs in their offense and what he does. But for me, he's not exactly going to garner a ton of money. Again, we can look at some of the center contracts. I think that's what we would be looking for. And some of the guarantees, maybe around, 35, $40 million. And for the contract of Trey Smith, I think you're looking probably closer to 4 years and much less money than Creed Humphrey in that regard. Because again, for somebody who's a good player, but he is not an all-pro. He's not, and I don't think he's going to get to be an all-pro this season. It would be great if he did. So he's got some ways to work with his footwork still and his consistency in the pass game. He does like to lunge still at tackles and defensive ends when they're up against him. So there are some things to work on for him. And if I do think he's going to be in Kansas City for a long time. I don't think they want to move him. He fits well next to Creed Humphrey. They play well together, and he might end up playing next to Jawan Taylor for a long time too. So I think that keeping those guys together is important. So you might end up seeing the guarantees for him be a little bit higher. The contract may be a little bit higher with some of the better guards in the NFL, but I don't think you're talking anywhere close to Joe Thuney money, because obviously that's the overpay to bring him into Kansas City was to help solidify the offensive line. So I do think that Trey Smith is going to get a contract extension. No, we'll see how it looks at the end of the season. Thank you for the question, man. Jamie, thank you. Dan, I'm in a keeper league, and I'm keeping Pacheco as an undrafted pick. That's a great keep for you because you don't lose any picks. You don't lose any of your picks. I've actually never been in a keeper league, funny enough. I was going to have one this season. It was going to be my first one, and then they decided that they wanted to switch everything to a dynasty league. So it's it's definitely a little bit different from a keeper perspective. But what I understand is that the players you choose to keep, the round that you pick them in, you don't get that round going forward for this next year. So having an undrafted player being on your roster probably as your RB2, RB3 is a really nice get for you. So I'm happy for you. Steven, thank you. All right. What is your prerequisite minimum 40-yard dash for running backs and wide receivers? Just be a matter a lot in your evaluations. So you don't have to be fast to be good. I think we kind of understand that. It depends on how it works. So college, honestly, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has reshaped some of my valuation on running back specifically, because I don't really care so much if you run a 4.6. It depends on the burst. All right, can you get to the second and third levels quickly? How much patience behind the line of scrimmage is you trying to do too much, or you just don't see things? So for 40 yards, I don't care about the 4.6s as much. I don't want to see a 4.65. I don't want to see a 4.7. Those are numbers that I don't want to see, but a 4.6 is fine as long as you have the burst and you're quick to get to the second level. That's what matters, especially in today's NFL. Long speed doesn't matter so much, especially with defenses playing such long coverages, such as cover 2 shells and cover 3, and getting, especially against the Chiefs. Doesn't matter so much for me specifically, but it's nice to see speed. It's nice to see Devin Achane being a track star, track athlete, playing in that offense in Texas A&M, and now he's going to be in Miami. That's just going to be a fun place to watch him. So I like to see in the 4.5s. 4.4s are fantastic. 4.3, I don't care. I don't care if you're running back and you're running 4.3. You're probably going to be really small. Like Devin Achane, for example. He's fun, but he might get hurt. So in the sweet spot for me is that 4.45. That's like a beautiful spot. You have enough speed to break away from your second and first level defenders, and you have enough burst to help you get through there. So that's what it is for running backs. On wide receivers, I prefer to see 4.5 and under. I don't want to see a 4.6 wide receiver unless you're just pure possession, which is fine. There are different ways to use those 4.6 players in the NFL. They don't necessarily have to be guys that are burning. They have to be, if you run a 4.6, I want to see good clean routes getting open consistently. So speed matters. The phrase speed kills. It definitely does. But at the same time, if you aren't good at what you do, but you're fast, I don't really care. So there's some guys like Jalen Hyatt from last year, John Ross from a few years ago, where they're really fast guys on the field. They don't know what they're doing otherwise. And I don't know what's going to happen with Jalen Hyatt, but that's one of the reasons I had a 3rd-round grade on him, because I don't see him do anything else. So there's a little bit of insight into how I evaluate, and how it's an always changing process. Players, prospects will change that as it goes forward. And, Clyde did that for me because I had him as a really high valued prospect, but it's changed because we see now that his biggest thing in college was making 2nd-level defenders think. You don't have time to do that as much in the NFL. Those windows close, and if you don't have the burst with running a 4.6 to continuously use that, it's just not very useful. So he's been a good enough player when he's healthy to kind of be good. He was efficient last year, but at the end of the day, that is not enough to be a number 1 running back. It's not enough to be a first running back on your big board. So thanks for that, Stephen. All righty. Jackson, thank you for the question. Realistically, if Sneed is traded this season, what compensation could the Chiefs receive? I don't think that they want anything that's not at least a mid, maybe not mid, but 20, what's projected to be in the 20s 1st-round draft pick. I would imagine somewhere 20s later would be more of what they're looking for. Maybe a high 2nd plus a player, or multiple 2nds would possibly get it done as well. It's more realistic for multiple 2nds. I don't know if you'll get a 1st, but again, he's a very good slot player who's been playing more on the outside, and I think he's been showing his value as a blitzer, which teams really do want as well. They want to be able to send guys off the edge from this slot position, and he's been a very good player. So you could still get him. I think he's an ascending player as well, and that helps you get maybe one of those later round 1st-round draft picks. I do think that's definitely within the cards. Well, once again, thank you, Stephen. Do you discourage steak being cooked well done? Why? Have you ever tried reverse sear method? So I don't discourage doing, a well done steak, because if that's how you prefer to eat your steak, that's how you prefer to eat it. I don't have an issue with that myself. I mean, I just don't eat it that way. I don't like well done steak. I prefer the flavor that, a medium rare. I like rare. I like rare steaks. When the rare steak is done well, when I'm doing it myself, I love that. So it's just not something that I like to do. But if you like a well done steak, you like a well done steak. It is what it is. As long as you don't overcook it to the point of it being extremely dry, because there are ways to cook a well done steak and have it be juicy and still have it, taste good. That's really what matters at the end of the day. And yes, I have done reverse sear. That's what I do for my tri-tip. When I smoke my tri-tip, I smoke it and then I reverse sear it. I also have done it for tomahawk steaks because they're pretty thick too. And that's the best way I found to keep that color all the way through and not have like that well done part on top and then almost raw in the middle. It's the best way for me to cook the thicker pieces of meat that I find is to do a reverse sear. I like that question. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate the super chat, Teddy. Thank you very much. How many All-Pro or Pro Bowlers do you think they could have this season? So let me look up really quickly how many Pro Bowlers the Chiefs had last year, because that'll help me figure it out. Excuse me. So the Chiefs had 7 last year. 7 Pro Bowlers. Easily. I think they could easily do that this year. I think they could get around 8 if they had another player step up. I think you're going to have one of the tackles kind of play really well. That's going to have to kind of be Juwan Taylor. I think he's going to have to step up, but I think Trent McDuffie could reasonably make the Pro Bowl this year. I think that he's well known enough now by the fans to get those votes, and yeah, I think 8 might be the most you see from the Pro Bowl teams. I think 7 is probably where they're going to end up again, but 8 could be possible. All pros. We know Patrick Mahomes. We know Creed Humphrey, I think, is going to be in there as well. I think we know that Travis Kelce will be. Joe Thuney probably be there. We are thinking that L'Jarius Sneed might be able to make it in there this year. We think maybe Nick Bolton's going to have a chance. Chris Jones. Did I say Chris Jones? No, I didn't. With Chris Jones, will definitely be in the conversation. So I think you could have anywhere from 4 to 7 All-Pros in Kansas City next year. It wouldn't shock me anywhere. Thank you for the question, man. Appreciate the super chat. What's going on, Nick? How you doing? Thank you for the question and the super chat. Very much appreciated. Could Drew Tranquil be a mentor pickup to help Chanel progress further in the Sam role? No. He'll be a mentor pickup for the younger players for sure, but he's not a Sam. He's a coverage linebacker, and Chanel has not been a coverage linebacker. He's been that Sam role, which is going to be like your outside linebacker type guy, comes in on the run to help defend against the run and come off when it's more of a passing situation. And Drew Tranquil will be the opposite. Well, he'll stay off the field for the most of your rundowns and come in your pass coverage situations. It's possible that he can pass on some of his understanding. Maybe he can help him develop past what he is as a Sam and become an actual linebacker that plays a little bit more in the coverage areas. But I don't really know. What's up? Take a little break in the question here everybody can say hello to my daughter.
Hello.
Thank you, sweetie. She had a pretty rough day falling off her bike, but she did a good job, didn't she? Yeah. I love you. Thank you, sweetie. Can I have a kiss? I love you. Okay, all done. Please be good for mommy. Be good for mommy.
All right.
Good night, sweetie. All right. So yeah, I think that Chanel's just more of your Sam right now, but I think I'm hopeful that they can use him in some pass rush situations. Maybe he can learn from Drew as some trying to get better in the coverage aspect, because I think that's the one thing to him being worth that 3rd round draft pick is to be better in pass coverage than he was last year and in college. So I'm hopeful that he can get there and that Drew Tranquil can help him do that. Thank you for the question, Nick. Appreciate it. All right. Brent, Dan, the Chiefs have to play with less rest than their opponents for 6 straight weeks from week 12 to week 17. How much of an impact will this have on their record? Well, I think that Andy Reid and the coaching staff have done a very good job of understanding how much wear and tear is put on their bodies for the last 5 years. They've gone to AFC Championship games, for the last 5 years in a row. They've hosted them. So the fact that they've done all of that, they've been able to get to the Super Bowl and continue to win games the next year. I think that, all these games in the NFL, you're going to get other teams' best shot already. They're going to do a good job of managing rest between these games and figuring out how best recovery goes. They have an excellent training staff, and I think that that's a huge bonus in situations like this. Travis Kelce has talked specifically on his podcast with Jason, his brother, about the recovery aspect and the medical staff that they have and how fantastic they are and how well they are at preparing for situations like this. And, he's actually also talked about how they love Thursday night football games. They love that aspect. You don't practice as much during the week. You rest more. Your body rests more, and you have the understanding now of how to go about that. So as much as it can be a disadvantage to teams, I think that they are well prepared. They're going to be well prepared since they've had a lot of time to figure out the kind of mentality that they're going to have for that stretch. I think they'll be in good shape. So I don't know if it's going to impact their record specifically because of the rest, but we'll kind of wait and see how that goes, because you'll see how they play. If they look lethargic and things like that, you can tell that it'll have an effect. I would say it won't right now. Things can always change, though. Appreciate that. It's a good question. Take another drink here. All right. I appreciate you, Gary. Everyone say shout out to Gary, one of our moderators, one of the original, if not the original, members of RGR Football. Thank you for being here with us tonight, Gary, as always. Dan, do you really think that the Chiefs are going to keep 7 receivers? If they don't, will they probably cut Justin Ross? So if you guys have been keeping up with me for the most of the offseason, I've been confident and comfortable that they're going to keep 7 wide receivers until recently. I rediscovered that they didn't keep 6 receivers on their roster last year when the final roster was set. They had 4 tight ends and they had 5 receivers. With that in mind, when you subtract the fullback from the equation, that leaves 6 receivers for your active roster this year as the projection. So I was confident that they were going to keep those receivers, and I no longer am. So I think that we're talking 6 wide receivers, and I don't think that Justin Ross at this moment, again, I have not seen him play at all since college. Okay. That was 2 years ago now. I haven't seen him play. So training camp will get here. I'm going to try to get eyes down there myself and get to see how he looks and see how a lot of these younger guys look. So right now, I don't project him making the team. So I think that he'll be on the practice squad once again, unless he forces their hand. Thank you, Gary. Not one more inch. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. Over or under Mahomes over 5,000 passing yards. Is it necessary to be over for us to get back to win the Super Bowl? So, good question. I like both of these aspects because it does give you a flavor of what the Chiefs are going to be doing this year, in my opinion. So, I think Mahomes goes over 5,000 yards. I think we have seen that they understand how to throw the football better than almost any team in the NFL. Last year, Patrick Mahomes had like 7. He had 7 300-yard games. The next closest player was with 3. Like there was 4 tied with 3. He just knows. They know how to get the ball going. So I'm not too worried about the number for Patrick, but it is not necessary for them to throw for over 5,000 yards for them to get back to the Super Bowl, because we saw last year in the back half of the season, what I mean by back half is after the bye week, they were running the football really, really well. Over 110 plus yards, I think, in don't you guys will find out exactly the number in my video on Wednesday, but they were running the ball really well, 100 plus, 110 plus yards in a lot of their games, and especially in the postseason against the Jaguars and against the Eagles, they established the run very well. I don't necessarily think that Mahomes needs to have over 5,000 yards for them to be super successful, because at the end of the day, the team is adapting to what defenses are doing very well, and they're staying ahead of that curve now better than they ever have before. So I'm quite optimistic that they're going to be just fine. Thank you for the question. Appreciate it. What's going on, Jackson? Thank you for the question. When you and Ryan talk about 3-4 scheme, you guys make it seem like a good speed component is absolute must. Why is that? So if you think about a 3-4 scheme, your angles on the outside are better, okay? So you have 3 down linemen. So they have that nose tackle. You have your defensive ends, which are typically playing shaded to the inside or right on those, or shaded to the inside of the tackles. And then you have your outside linebackers. Those outside linebackers are further away from the quarterback, so they have more ground to cover than your defensive ends in a 4-3 defense. The reason you have these outside linebackers like a Josh Allen for the Jaguars or a Von Miller now for the Bills, they're smaller on their outside because they can get to that edge quickly, and they have to be able to bend around. If you just rush upfield, it's further ground for you to have to get around these tackles who can just kind of sit there and push it at the back. So if you can quickly get to your spot behind that tackle, or force these tackles to quickly get to their spots, you create a gigantic gap in between the guard and tackle for them to then get through. It's better, it's easier for these athletic, fast guys to be outside linebackers than it is for them to be true 4-3 defensive ends, where power and speed to power is very, very important, because you have less ground to cover, which means less time that it would take to get to the quarterback if you can powerfully beat these tackles. At the edge, you have to be a little bit quicker when the ball comes out so quick. So that's why you kind of see defenses go that route. It's not a necessity, but it does help a lot, especially with all that ground to cover. I hope that explanation answered your question, Jackson, and everyone else that was kind of wondering about that. I hope I was able to explain that pretty well. Thanks, man. All right, Raz Grizz. Hey, I got it right this time. After you say it the wrong time for once, it's definitely going to stick in your head. Every time Ryan says it, I get back on it myself. So thank you for the question. Could we see Connor line up at safety more because of his prior experience as depth behind Cook? Absolutely. I think you definitely could early in the season. That's probably where he's going to be for most of his rookie season. You don't need him to play slot at all, but the reason that he played slot in his last season at Virginia Tech is because they needed him to. They didn't have anybody else that could do it, and he learned a brand new defensive system. He also was moved all over the place, not just slot. He can play anywhere in that backfield, in the defensive backfield. So he's a very versatile player, and Chamari is going to be a lot of fun to watch on the blitz too. I think that he's definitely somebody that can be used as the blitzer, more of a too deep safety kind of guy, but you're not going to see him as a single high at all. They don't really have a true single high safety on this roster. I'm going to be very interested to see how that works in Kansas City this season. But I do think that at the end of the day, Connor is going to line up more as your safety, probably box safety, maybe a little bit of slot if they want to move, L'Jarius Sneed around a little bit differently. So he's going to be fun to watch this season, and definitely somebody that we are going to get, I think, accustomed to seeing over the course of the next few years in a lot of different places. Versatility has been the name of the game in Kansas City on offense and on defense, and I'm excited to see how it goes. But yes, I think that's what we're going to see. And thank you again, Stephen. Is Joe Thuney a tradable asset? If so, what would you trade him for and when? I don't believe that the Chiefs would ever want to trade Joe Thuney. He's too valuable, and also they have quite a bit of money invested in him. So if you look at his money contract this year, I mean, they do technically have an out after this season. He's making $22 million against the cap this year, $22 million against the cap next year, and $22 million against the cap the year after that. So personally, I think that he has been worth his weight, and especially if the Chiefs are going to be very comfortable with him on the roster this year at $22 million, it definitely makes sense to keep him there. He's 31 years old, very easily one of the best guards in football. So technically, I think you could trade him if you wanted to, but I don't think there's any realistic possibility that he will be traded. So hypothetically, if they were to trade him, I think probably after this offseason, he's 31. You could probably still get a first-round draft pick for him because he's not just a guard. He's a perennial all-pro left guard who can play tackle in a pinch. He can play center. He's very versatile, valuable. So you could probably get a first-round draft pick plus for him, even though he is in his 30s. He's so valuable, and what he does, he's such a good guard. He can play multiple positions, all five positions, honestly, and those guys are very, very hard to find. So hypothetically, yes, I do think they could get a first plus for a guy like Joe Thuney, who's been invaluable to them regardless of his contract. More than worth what they paid for him. Absolutely. Thank you, Steven. Thank you for the super chat, Dub. Very, very much appreciated the support. That's fantastic. You guys are great. I love it. Hopefully, when we confirm the Chris Jones extension, where would you honestly try and help the team? Personally, I'd love for us to get another defensive tackle to help stop and CJ being double teamed each down. So also big love from the UK. I'm an Aston Villa fan. That's okay. I hold nothing against anybody that has their own, affiliations with soccer, football, whatever you want to call it. But thank you very much for the support. So personally, as much as I don't disagree with you, there's just not much defensive tackle help out there. There really isn't. I think that they're set on the defensive side for now at defensive tackle. I would look at defensive end. There's some guys out there, Yannick Ngakoue, Jadeveon Clowney. You have to kind of figure out what these guys are going for, but I would be I'd look really hard at Yannick Ngakoue. who's going to be a helpful player on third down. You don't necessarily need him as much on second down. I think they're pretty set on those run downs. I think they'll be okay there. But in terms of the offensive side, I think they're okay at wide receiver, but DeAndre Hopkins would still be a lot of fun in this offense. I think that he would be one of those pieces not only to help Rashee Rice grow as the player that he is, because their skill sets and what they do best right now are similar. And I think that the experience from DeAndre Hopkins would help Rashee get better in that regard. I think that would be important for him to take steps as a wide receiver, especially in Andy Reid's offense, which is so difficult to learn for these young players. And I would still like to see Dalvin Cook in Kansas City. I think that Dalvin's a fun player. I think that in this offense would be a fun fit for him, especially if he is fully healthy. The report for him this offseason was that they finally fixed that shoulder, but I'm not entirely sold on that. But having three guys on the roster in CEH, now Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon, who now have injuries recently, it'd be nice to have another guy who's experienced, been there, done that, and can help them with continuing on to win another Super Bowl. So that's what I would say. I think priority-wise, I would go defensive end first over anybody else. Then look at DeAndre Hopkins and then look at running back. Appreciate the support again for the question, Dub. Very much appreciate it. Hope you're doing well getting out here for a live when it's, what is it? It's like, what, in the middle of the night over there in England? So, yeah, hope you're getting some rest. Appreciate it. What's up, Z? How you doing, man? Appreciate the question and you being here with me tonight. A couple of my my fantasy football friends in the chat. I appreciate you guys for coming in. How do you envision a Kansas City offense without Travis Kelce? I envision it in like 4 years. That's what I'll tell you right now. I can't imagine right now that they would have a lot of fun without Travis Kelce. But if for whatever reason, if we envision an offense without it, I think what we look at is a guy like Jody Fortson being asked to take more of the receiving role on. He does fit that mold of what they're looking for, a guy who can stretch the field, is getting better understanding those spots in the zone. He's not the best route runner. Obviously, he was a prior wide receiver at Valstad or Valsta. I can't remember his college he played at. That's my apologies to you, Jody. But Noah Gray's a fine player. I don't think that they can really ask him to take on a bulk of that because he's just not as nuanced. He's really just more of a tight end too that is going to block well for you and just kind of do what he's asked. So he doesn't have that receiving upside. So in terms of the offense itself, it's going to flow through another player, Valstad. Baldasta. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. I just can't pronounce it right. But it's going to flow through a little bit more Kadarius Toney. I think you'll see Skyy Moore get more of those Travis Kelce plays, the option routes, things like that. Where Travis Kelce wins now, it's not deep down the field. It's in the short and the intermediate, even though he is a field stretching element. Still, the scheme allows him to win down the field because he reads defenses so well. I think Skyy is in line to be more of that kind of player because I do think he can read defenses well. I saw, that adjustment from him last year where he's playing against coverages and understanding that leverage a corner is playing with, and he can release his route a little bit differently based on it. So if I had to guess, Skyy Moore would be the guy to be in line for more of the Travis Kelce role, just used a little bit differently. So I hope that clears things up a little bit. But realistically, I don't want to think about it for another 4 years. Thanks, Z. I appreciate it, man. Hope you're doing well. All right, Mason, how's it going, man? What do you think about the Chiefs adding massive depth to their linebacker room this offseason? This because the team is looking to take a more rotational route for Nick Bolton and Willie Gay? So, yeah. So, Kevin, I haven't seen your question. I'll be very honest with you. If you didn't put, I didn't see your question. So if you want to ask it again, I can address it. But I didn't see one. So that's my fault. I'm doing this myself tonight, and sometimes I miss some questions. So I apologize on that. To answer your question, Mason, I think that the linebacker depth is because Willie Gay and Nick Bolton have not taken the requisite steps in coverage. I think Willie Gay has shown a lot as the athlete that he is, but the mental side is still developing. They're hoping Drew Tranquill can help with that. And I think that Drew is more going to be taking over some of those routes, some of those reps on third downs, specifically for Nick Bolton. And that's just kind of the player that Nick is. He's not a very good coverage linebacker. He's more of the thumper. We've seen that. He comes downhill. He can be involved in blitzing and really freeing up the defensive ends and defensive tackles for one-on-one situations. But I think when it comes to this team specifically, they want to be prepared for passing situations. They're going to be up in a lot of games, and they want their linebackers to not be targets. And we've seen linebackers get targeted and exploited more by slot receivers and tight ends nowadays than they ever have before. So adding Drew Tranquill to that is really important for them to win games. It's going to take a little bit of Nick Bolton off the field a little bit. They're going to try to find, I think, who's best in that mold, whether it's going to be Willie Gay and Drew Tranquill in nickel, if it's going to be Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquill in nickel, if it's going to be, they're going to find some way to kind of figure it out, who's going to be the dimebacker role. All of that figured out. But I think at the end of the day, a little bit less for Nick on third downs, and you'll see more Drew Tranquill. That's what I see about that. Thank you for the question, Mason. Kevin, what's going on? Dan, do you think defenses will go away from too high safety and let Pat bomb because they aren't afraid of our receivers? I think that I don't think they were afraid of the Chiefs receivers last year, and they still faced quite a few too high safeties. They still saw some single coverage, and that's when you saw Patrick look to take those shots downfield and try to take them over the top, and they missed on quite a few deep balls with Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I think that's going to change this year, and they're going to have some more connections on the downfield stuff. So, no, I don't think they're going to. At the end of the day, the one thing you're worried about with this offense is that Patrick's going to beat you over the top because that's what he wants to do it in essence, like in his truest form. If he could just throw it downfield all the time, I think that's what we've seen. That's what he would want to do. So I don't think it's going to go away. You'll probably see maybe a little bit more man coverage mixed in, but now that Patrick is taking off with his legs more and taking advantage and scrambling more efficiently, things that just don't work well like with man coverage defenses. I think that they're just going to have to pick their poison, and that's exactly what the Chiefs want. They want them to pick their poison. I appreciate the question, man. Thank you. I appreciate that, Z. You didn't have to do that. But again, thank you for the support. And again, love that you guys are in here. Some of my fantasy friends appreciate the support you guys are showing me by being in here. And thank you for the question. That it does mean a lot. It helps me out. So thank you very much. Daryl, thank you. Ryan is getting ready for vacation. He's going camping, and he's going to be out for I think about a week. He'll be back. He's going to try to be back next week, early-ish. He's going to try to make the Monday night. We'll see. Actually, he should be on the Monday night. I think I'll be doing the Sunday, and he'll be doing the Monday because I go on vacation next week. So yeah, he's just getting ready for vacation, and we all just kind of take a little bit of time here before the Chiefs get into training camp and try to take some time for ourselves. So that's what we're going to try to get done. Appreciate it, Daryl. Jacob, thank you. If you had to pick any of the year 2 players to play every snap, who would you pick on offense and defense, and why? Every snap, huh? Excuse me. All right, well, I think Trent McDuffie is the first on that list on defense because he's the one guy I think you can, from the year 2 guys who can play in the slot and on the outside seamlessly. I think that he's a good slot player. He learned a lot last year, especially against the Bengals in the postseason. But he's a very, very good coverage corner. I have zero issues with him being on the field 100% of the time. On offense, it's Skyy Moore for me. I would love to see him not leave the field at all, and I think he can do it all. He's a good run blocker for a guy his size. He's a good route runner, and I think you can use him in multiple ways. And at the end of the day, the reason it's not Pacheco is because he's not a very good pass blocker, and he now has 2 injuries from last year on his resume, and we don't know if he's going to be ready to participate in camp. So I'd rather keep him as healthy as possible, keep that rotation in the backfield. So Skyy Moore and Trent McDuffie are my easy picks for the year 2 guys that I want to be out there all the time. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. And Dez, thank you for your question. Pat has had some injuries. Realistically, without any other major injuries, do you think he can continue to play before he starts to fall off? So when? Okay, I think Patrick can play into his 40s. I really do. I think that what we've seen over the last couple of seasons is he's seen it. He's seen it all. He's seen the defenses. He's seen the coverages. He's seen the adjustments. And now we've seen him, especially last year. Last year was the big step. Take away Tyreek Hill. How the defenses are going to adjust to that because you don't have your big play, threat. They turned, Tyreek Hill into one of the most dangerous possession receivers in the NFL 2 years ago. How are they going to adjust to that? We saw it. They used Juju Smith-Schuster as their kind of like de facto possession receiver, but he was getting schemed into space. When you can scheme a guy who doesn't have a ton of speed and wiggle anymore into space, and he's able to create yards after the catch, I think we're kind of seeing right now that, and Patrick's going to find him. He saw the deep shots to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and he just missed on them. I think that's something that is year to year. It's not going to be a consistent thing year to year where he is missing those. He got to Skyy Moore. Travis Kelce is still there. They're going to adjust to that whenever that ends up going away. I think whenever we talk about Patrick Mahomes, yeah, it's great that he has all the physical tools in the world, but over the last 2 years, his mental game has grown so much that defenses now, he's starting to see he saw that drop 8, which gave him some trouble against the Bengals. You don't really see him making those mistakes. If he's getting time from the offensive line, he's going to make you pay. And other times he does run into some of his injury. He does run into some of the hits and things like that. But mentally speaking, I think that he's going to be able to play into his 40s without a ton of drop off. Honestly, we've seen Tom Brady air the ball out in his 40s with Tampa Bay. Like if he can keep that arm going with what Bobby has done with his philosophical way of keeping his body healthy and keeping the elasticity there, I think you can keep that. I think Patrick will be playing well into his 40s at a very high level. I think that's not out of the question. I appreciate it, Des. I also love all the Chiefs swag in the background. What's your favorite such cool? So yeah, I was able to, fortunate enough to have a couple of things sent my way, and I bought some of these because I love the Chiefs. So, but yeah, I think my favorite one, it might have been an add-on that came with one of the things that I ordered. These are all from RJ, by the way, a friend of the show, friend of the channel. But this one right here is from this past season. Then they won the one that they won. But this is might be one of my favorite things that I got. It's just the card from the Chiefs trading up to get Patrick Mahomes. That might be one of my favorite things, if not the coolest thing that I have. The favorite things. Now, not the coolest. The coolest thing that I have is this. My parents bought me this after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl in 2019. It's obviously a picture of them celebrating, and it's signed by every player from that team. So this is the coolest thing that I have from my Chiefs stuff, and I can interchange all this stuff whenever I feel like it. So yeah, pretty cool. Pretty happy. All right, a couple more questions, and we're gonna get on out of here. All right, thank you, Steven. Appreciate it. Is Jalen a potential Pro Bowler? What does he need to improve on? So yeah, I think he can be a potential Pro Bowler. The problem comes in now is getting more of those interceptions. And I think that he's going to be targeted more because he's going to be that third cornerback. So getting his head around, okay? He's in good position quite a lot. I think that's the big thing is that he's going to have to find a way. The Chiefs are going to have to find a way to let these guys get their heads around a little bit more. If they get more hands on footballs, create more pass breakups and some more interceptions, that's how Jalen's going to be able to get into the Pro Bowl, because I think he's a good player and in the right system for him. So that's the big thing for me is head around, hands on ball, bring ball down. That's pretty much it. All right. Do you think Pat's mental game can match or even surpass Peyton's? I don't know. It's a different time. It's a different age. I don't have a ton of knowledge about Peyton Manning's mental state. That's something I would have to talk to somebody about and see, compare. So while it's really, really excellent, I think that where Peyton came into the NFL may have been a little bit more advanced. I know he had a rough rookie season, but we saw some things from Peyton Manning because he didn't have that physical tools that Patrick does with his legs. He had to find different ways to win. So I think that's the big disconnect here. Maybe he was a bit more further along. Maybe he can someday. I don't know. I don't know much about Peyton's mind and things like that himself. So maybe I can ask somebody and find that out for you. Is that the real trade-up card? No, it's definitely not. It's definitely not a real one. It's more of a mimic, but it's something that was included in one of the pieces that I bought. I think it was included with that piece right there from their first Super Bowl victory. Just kind of a throw in after I bought it. So yeah, it's definitely not a real one. Which, if it was, I mean, yeah, that would not be on display here. I can promise you that, Z. All right, last one of the day. Thank you, Kevin. You didn't have to super chat. I appreciate it though. Thank you very much. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot or anything. I just didn't see the question. In a Chris Jones trade, would the good draft picks and cap space outweigh the bad, losing the best defense tackle in the league? No, it wouldn't, because the thing is, you're hoping that you can turn that cap space and draft picks into the production on offense and or defense that Chris Jones gives you. And having Chris Jones, who's right now he's still the second best defense tackle in the NFL. He's a top 5 pass rusher in the NFL, in my opinion. I believe that with every fiber of my being. You're hoping to get players that can do that, and with the draft being what it is, it's tough to guarantee that you're going to get any of those and that you can sign somebody that can bring what he does. What he brings in gravity to the defensive line, allowing one-on-ones pretty much at any time that it's not him, and the versatility he brings to play defensive end and defensive tackle and get in the backfield so quickly, it changes how offenses have to prepare. When you have a guy who can do that, can have a 16-plus sack season, have multiple of them, it changes how all of that is done. It changes the math. It makes the math on your side almost a guaranteed win for defense every single time. Obviously, with other things going on, I'm talking about more strictly pass rush. So he's a difference maker on a level that I think he's one of the best pass rushing defensive tackles we've seen in a very long time, out playing with, in the same air as Aaron Donald in terms of what they're doing right now. He doesn't have the number stats. He doesn't have the all pros and things like that for that Aaron Donald does. But right now he's in his prime. And I think that he's entering some of the best numbers. He's going to have some of the best stats, and he's going to start accruing some of these all pros and maybe defensive player of the year. It's a lot harder as a defensive tackle that's not Aaron Donald. But I think he's going to be in the conversation for the next couple of years. So as much as I definitely understand saying, okay, this could be the best season he's ever had, I'm not going to bet against it when all he's ever done really is get better and better and better. And this has been the best season of his career last season. So I say no, because I don't think that what you would get back in the capital and draft picks would turn into enough production to outweigh what Chris Jones can do on your defense. So that's my opinion on it. I know that a lot of people still would rather try to do what Bill Belichick has done and turn a lot of it into really good defensive players and scheme wise and attack it that way. I don't think Chris Jones is the guy you trade personally. But again, thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate you coming in and asking the question again. And I hope that my answer was good enough for you. Thank you guys so much for being out here for the show. We got KL in here as he always does with another super chat at the very end. I know he just got in here. So I appreciate you guys for being in here with me tonight. I will take on this one right here, and then we'll be all out. And we'll see you guys with Gary tomorrow, myself on Wednesday for another film room. So I got here just at the end. What's on the menu this week? I'm working on some of that ginger bourbon out your way, man. All that's thank you. I'm very much looking forward to that. That will be fantastic to work in some of my desserts. Last night I made a Biscoff cookie butter cheesecake. If you guys know what Biscoff is, they're those like, I don't even really know, cookie butter cookies that are like, that big. What I did was I ground all those Biscoff cookies up, and then I made those into the crust. They even have a cookie butter like peanut butter type thing. I made that into the cheesecake part, it was delicious. It was fantastic. It was one of the best cheesecake things I've ever made. So I did that last night. Since we're getting ready to go camping next week, I'm not sure if I'm gonna do a whole lot more for this, but what I am gonna do is I'm going to take my cast iron skillet with me because we're going glamping. My wife found some cabins that are like top tier in the Kansas City area, or down by the Ozarks, and we're gonna go do that. And I'm gonna take my cast iron with me, maybe buy some steaks and do them up on the outside. So maybe we'll get some pictures of me cooking an open fire for you. Okay, thank you very much for your super chat. And honestly, that ginger bourbon is going to be fantastic. So thank you very much. You guys are fantastic. I loved all the questions tonight. I'm hopeful that you guys learned a little bit from me, as I love answering your guys' questions. They're always good, and they always make you think a little bit more than every other day. So, oh yeah, no problem, Kevin. I appreciate it, man. No, thank you. Appreciate it. See you guys next time, and hope you have a fantastic rest of your evening, rest of your week. Like I said, tomorrow Gary will be with you guys again, going over some of his Super Bowl, how you get back there talk, and I'm coming back with it on Wednesday. We're talking about the run game. We're going into some breakdowns of the things the Chiefs are going to do, what they did last year in the run game, and how they're going to make next year and going forward more impactful in a year and in a time and an era where passing the football has made running the football more efficient and kind of better for your offense. So I hope you guys enjoy that. You guys have a good night. We'll see you next time.